Hi, good morning, everybody. Here we are live from the Crow's Nest with, drumroll, our inventor, Desiree Dubonnet, and Rita. Rita, we are glad to have you both to talk about some of your past history for those who don't know, and in electrical engineering, and of course, also some of the important work that's being done in the field of supporting athletes. So, welcome everybody, and welcome Desi and Rita. Hello, hello.
Hello. Howdy.
Excellent.
Good
All
morning,
right.
Doc. Good morning to everybody.
Good morning. All right. Well, what you see here posted on the screen are news articles from back in the day when Desi was doing electrical engineering for AC Electronics, which was a subcontractor of NASA, and when she worked on the Apollo
Yes.
11 mission. So, Desi, why don't you give us a little background on this?
Well, 50 years ago. Oh my God.
Wow, is it? Yeah, it really is that long.
Yeah, 50 years ago today. And basically, I had graduated in June, graduated high school in June, and there was a job at General Motors Institute for electrical engineering students. And they interviewed about 5,000 people, and they chose two, and I was one of them.
Awesome.
And I was the one, and then they chose me to actually work on the gyro system. And there I was, right out of high school, and sitting at a desk, sitting at a console, looking at the telemetry coming in from Apollo 11 as they landed. And it was absolutely amazing. And kind of like the job that I had was to monitor the different dishes around the world. They had all of these different big giant dish that would, be able to amplify the signal coming from the spacecraft. And I was monitoring that. I saw the telemetry, or I didn't understand at this time. This was just a menial job that I had because I just started. And it was very interesting, and there I was. And because I did work on there's a little plaque that was left on the moon on the lunar landing module, and there's a little plaque, and behind that plaque is a list of all the 100,000 names of people who worked on the Apollo project, and my name's there. My name's on the moon.
Wow. Wow, what an incredible thing to know. It's just up there.
Next time you're up there, you can check.
Yeah, we need that fact check.
Anyway, so it was just fascinating, Apollo 11. And what the thing that I think that people are most interested in is I could tell you that the dishes around the world were all aimed at the moon. And it would be impossible for a satellite to make this, it would be impossible for any satellite in the orbit to make the signal that would be coming to each of these dishes. In other words, the triangulation of where these dishes were pointed to, when you looked at it and triangulated it, they were coming from the moon. So that's why people who might doubt the Apollo thing, if you look at the Mythbusters, and you can see that absolutely it's been proven we have been to the moon. They even left a laser rebound device that they rebounded a laser against. So it's just like proof. But I can tell you that basically I saw that these dishes were aimed. Now the interesting thing about these dishes is they landed on the moon, and all the dishes were receiving. And just at the time when they were about to get out of the lunar landing module and walk on the moon, the major dish in America, in Utah, started to have a flutter in it, and it started to have a problem and did not receive a clear signal. And the only dish that was functioning that got the whole thing was the big dish in Australia, way out in the outback there of Australia. And if you ever want to see a very interesting movie called The Dish, Sam Neely there, a very, very good movie. And it shows the true story about how this dish, they had to fight against the weather and the wind, and they kept it alive, and they got the signal when they landed on the moon, and that was because of that. But that was just exciting. And then we all sat there, I know, that day, and we all said there, within the next 50 years, we said we're all going to know people who live on the moon. Because now that we settled there, I mean, we put a foothold out there. Just, we're going to go back and build settlements, start expanding. Within the next 50 years, we'll have cities on the moon, which we could very easily have. One of the problems about space travel that we learned in getting to the moon is that once you leave the magnetic protection of the planet Earth, there's incredibly bad rays coming in from the sun, zeta rays and X-rays and all different types of things. Very, very bad. So you need a shield. Now, here on the planet Earth, we have a great big magnetic shield made by the planet Earth's magnetic field. But where else do you find a big shield? Well, you find it on the moon. The far side of the moon is shielded from the sun's rays. We could easily build cities there. They would be shielded from the sun's rays, the bad rays. And then we would have, on the front of the moon, we would have unlimited solar power to power anything we want. We could build panels that would never have a cloudy day. You never get a cloudy day on the moon. Right. Well, once a year or so, you might get a lunar eclipse, but that's about it. But you would have all of the energy you would need. You could pump it into the cities. The cities could burrow underneath the moon's surface to protect themselves from asteroids, etc. There's everything. There's all kinds of sand, dust on the moon that can be made into glass and made into all different types of things. The moon has a complete source of minerals. And now we find out that the moon has a water supply. There's actually a water supply underneath the surface of the moon.
I have not heard that. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Because I know that when something hit, or it was either a bomb, I think that might have been set off there for testing in our recent past, that they noted that the moon rang like a bell.
Yeah, when they were there and they left all this equipment, see, and then when an asteroid, the moon does not have the defense of a atmosphere. Here on the planet Earth, asteroids are coming. They're shooting stars, and they're coming here, and they burn up in the atmosphere. It's rare that a meteor hits the planet Earth. It does happen. It's happened recently. But on the moon, they don't have that. But here an asteroid hit, and the moon shimmies and will ring like a bell and have a movement. But we would be able to build cities on the far side of the moon. And that would be, and then taking off from the moon is very simple. It does not take much power. The lunar landing module was a big, giant cardboard box, is about what it was. And it was like the size of maybe 10 refrigerator boxes. Okay, big refrigerator boxes. Yep. And they took off with one little engine, and it launched up and went into orbit around the moon. The moon is 1/6 the size of the planet Earth. The moon is actually about the size of America, only into a ball. That's what the size of the moon is. So there's much less gravity. If we moved people to the moon, if you were elderly and started to lose touch with gravity on the moon, you could, be flexible and jump around, because it'd be a 1/6 gravity. We thought that was all these things would be possible, but we just never ever went back. Strange.
Why do you think that is?
Well, a lot of people say because there's aliens on the moon, and we, haven't seen any absolute proof of that, but it's just weird. But the people who worked on the Apollo, I saw Krantz and some of the other people who were the head of what, if you saw the movie Apollo 13, let's see, Norton was the guy, I can't remember the name of the actor, but he played the guy who ran the Apollo 13 recovery from Houston. Okay, well, the real man, I just saw him interviewed, and they asked him the question, why we don't back? And he said, listen, he says, our leaders just aren't focused on that. we're actually spending too much money on nuclear bombs. Going to the moon now is a very cheap thing because of the technology. We estimate now it would only cost about $10 billion. And you have to understand that our defense budget is over $1,000 billion. And if we just took 10 of that, we could settle and put 20 people or more into a small little city on the moon, and then let that grow. And within another 20, 30 years, we'll have settlements. But it just takes commitment from the top.
Well, it's interesting because I have a friend from Houston who does work for NASA, and I remember that NASA watched intently as China sent, landed on the moon recently, and we're excited.
Yeah, China will probably be the one who actually settled there, because America's just the bottom line is we had a choice about where to put our money, and we keep funding more nuclear bombs. The rich people, the Brandenburgs, basically do not want to share that money that they get for the nuclear bombs. Like we don't have enough. We already now have enough. We have enough nuclear bombs in America to destroy the planet about 120, 130 times. So we have enough nuclear bombs. But no, these people who make them do not want their budget cut. In fact, under Trump, their budget has been extended. Now they get more money to make nuclear bombs.
Well, for anybody who doesn't know what the gyros is, you've explained it to us before. Why don't you share a little bit more about how your calculations on that were vital to the success of the mission?
Well, if you rode a bike, you know that the motion of the bike's wheels create a gyroscope effect that help to hold you up. Just like if you have a Segway, the reason you could stand on that Segway is because there's a little gyroscope in there. Once something is rotating like a wheel, it wants to stay in that same position. That's basically a top. Spin a little top on your desk, and you'll see it wants to hold that position. If the desk moves up and down, side to side, the top won't. It will stay in that position. So that's how we made a gyroscope. And a gyroscope allows you to navigate in three-dimensional space. Now, we had a navigation gyroscope on the Apollo, and there was another one on the lunar landing module. So there was two on the trip, because they had to separate in the moon's orbit so that they could land with the lunar landing module and then take off again and return to the Apollo spacecraft to return to the planet Earth. So what the company I worked for, what we did was we made those navigation systems. This is virtually the same navigation system that is used in the 747, the big airplane.
Right.
And it's made out of beryllium, and I patented a beryllium deburring process. And one day I forgot to put I was so excited about my patent, and it was working so well. And I ran in and I forgot to put my gear on. I forgot to put all my safe suit on, and I was working there for more than an hour with the beryllium dust at my face. They came in and they grabbed me and they threw me in the shower.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm probably the only person, when you test me on the machine, you're going to see beryllium toxicity come up. I had beryllium toxicity in my lungs.
Wow. I never knew that.
Yeah.
That's something new.
Well, it doesn't come up too many times on the machine, but it comes up on me quite often. So it's strange. I put it in.
Oh, I lost him. Hang on a second.
Extremely.
Desi, you kind of cut in and out on those last two sentences. Do you mind repeating it?
I'm getting a poor connection for my internet now. Okay, it's better now. What did I say?
Last 2-3 sentences. It was after the beryllium toxicity problem.
Okay, beryllium toxicity, and I have it. It appears on the machine. I put it into the machine because of me. So I think that's what I said.
Well, good. I hope you've been successful at detoxing that a bit.
I have a strong prevalence to asthma and lung conditions, especially in the early winter and early spring. It hits me, and it's something I have to be aware of. So I have to be aware that it's there.
That
But beryllium's an extremely light metal, very very light metal.
as
But
opposed to heavy.
It's like asbestos. It's not meant to be in the human body.
Right. So you have to take a little extra care for your lungs and detoxify and do all of that. And awareness is the key. So excellent. All right. Well, why don't you talk about what happened? When it was determined that they were going to have to turn the system on and off again and recalculate.
Well, today is the anniversary of Apollo 11. And Apollo 11, we didn't have to do that. See, I just was sitting behind the console looking at telemetry. A little bit later, Apollo 12 will go off, and that's the anniversary will be next year of that. And Apollo 12, when it went off, it pretty much had no hitch. I had a bigger job in Apollo 12 because I was, getting up in the seniority. And then after Apollo 12, there was about 12 of us working in the mathematic department at AC Electronics. That's where I worked. AC Electronics, it was a branch of General Motors. I was a GMI student at the time. And then because we lost the bid on the shuttle, we had already built all of the Apollo navigation systems. I helped to check Apollo 13, Apollo 14, Apollo 15, 16, all the way up to 20. Many of them that were never used, okay? But I checked all of them. I snuck a little bit of my fingernail into one. so that my DNA would be on the moon. But anyway, so we did that, and I had everything there. And Apollo 13 isn't going to happen for another year or so, see? So I'll tell that story when that ends. 50 years, no, not 50 years, 1975, on July the 18th, which was yesterday, that was the first time that a Russian Soyuz spacecraft docked with an Apollo, and the United States and Soviet spacecraft actually docked together. So that was very interesting. That happened in 1975. So July, this is kind of an interesting time. Crazy energy is coming around. And this 50-year anniversary of landing on the moon, it's just starting to spark a lot of people. And actually, Donald Trump is starting to talk about the moon and Mars.
He's starting to sparkle too.
But we can't get to Mars without a base on the moon.
Right.
If our Martian astronauts were going to Mars and all of a sudden needed help, it's too much to get something into orbit from the planet Earth. It's too expensive. And but if we create a base on the moon, and why don't we create a base on the moon? Well, that's always the question. Why not? And I think what I see is just a fact about money. But right now, $10 billion is what it costs to buy one aircraft carrier. One aircraft carrier. Do we need another one now? Do we need to build another aircraft carrier? We don't have enough, So it seems to me like $10 billion, could be spent. We could put people on the moon, and once we start doing that, they could start getting their own natural resources and building their own building material to get bigger and bigger, and get material up there to start building caves and etc. And we could get a base on the moon that would be able to help us get off into the rest of the universe. Right now, the super we talked about the super volcano not far from you over there.
Right.
That blows, and all of humanity, it could be destroyed. There's several scenarios that all of humanity on the planet Earth could end. There could be a meteor, a planet killer meteor could hit, the planet and destroy all life. That could happen. We find out that there are asteroids that actually just missed the planet Earth recently, and we didn't even know. You see, so if we have all of humanity on the planet Earth, the human race could be destroyed. And if we had a settlement on the moon, it's the human nature to try to, go out and to go. But then there's another part of the human nature for greed.
Well, it's so interesting to hear about your long history with NASA and what the goals were, during that first exciting time, 50 years ago, of all of the goals and all of the plans. And it must have been a strange experience for you, having, your early professional years tied with this activity, the Apollo projects, etc., and then watching all of it not happen. I mean, what was that like, Desi?
But they sent me to Cape Canaveral. I worked at Cape Canaveral for a bit too, and that was really cool. And I went there. We had a job to do at Cape Canaveral, and we're walking home this one night, and the guy says, do you want food? And I said, of course, for dinner. And he reached into his backpack and he pulled out a net, just a small little fishing net. We walked over a bridge. He threw the fishing net into the water. The river went by. He waited about 5 minutes, and then he pulled the net up, and there was more than a basketball size of shrimp. Literally hundreds of shrimp caught. We took the shrimp home, boiled them in beer, and sat there. Every night we would sit there and eat shrimp, boiled in beer. Oh, it was wonderful. We'd look up, and we'd see the moon, and we're all talking. 50 years from now, there's going to be cities up there, and 50 years from now, there's nothing. We haven't even gone back. After the Apollo, I think the last one that landed was the 16th, and we just haven't gone back. And what?
Well, of course, it makes me wonder, do you think that there's possibly visits there that just weren't shared with the public?
Well, anyway, all I can say is the fact that there's rumblings about it now, because now the cost of the technology is come way down. So there's rumblings about it now,
right?
And but it was kind of disheartening to see what the human could do, and it was very exhilarating and a wonderful experience for me to be part of it.
Yeah.
And then I was a big part of bringing back the Apollo 13. And I'll talk about that some other day when there's when we come up with that anniversary.
Right. Well, and it's again just an amazing background in math and engineering that you brought to our technology. And I see too that NASA has released a lot of photos from the moon to try to debunk some of the conspiracies that it was all staged in order to save face with the Russians. What are your comments?
From my own personal experience, I tell you that the dishes were aimed there, and if you triangulate all these dishes, it was coming from the moon. So the idea that this signal was coming someplace else was wrong. So that was my own experience, and I talked to some of the astronauts, and they came back, and etc. And the big thing was, if you just watch the MythBusters episode, where they take all of the conspiracy ideas about the flag and about the footprints and about it, and they take each and every one of them and they debunk them. They prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that we've been to the moon. And please watch that freaking thing with MythBusters before you start making comments, okay? Because if you watch that, you're just going to see all those different conspiracy ideas float away, okay?
Well, and and part of those conspiracy theories regarded a question that was asked previously. I don't see it now, but it was about the Van Allen belts. One of the conspiracy theories was that there was no way that we would survive, or that the equipment would survive passage through the Van Allen belts. But
when they went through and when they escaped the Van Allen belts, then there was zeta effects, and they reported that inside the capsule, all of a sudden there would be little pops in the air, and that's one of these high energy rays from the sun hitting a piece of oxygen in the air. Getting something in it's inside the
capsule,
inside the spacecraft capsule. Yeah. So, but what if that would have hit inside your body? It could kill you, but it could make cancer, etc. So traveling to the moon is right now would be chancy, but there are many people who would be happy to take that risk, to be able to go to a place where there was 1/6 gravity, to work, so that they could go in there and mine different things and set a settlement up there. It could be, but yeah, it would be iffy. And I'll tell you what, the stewardesses and airplane pilots, they are restricted in the amount of hours that they can be in the air, because they know that they have risk. They don't have so much atmosphere to protect them. So there is a number of hours that a stewardess can work, and she can't work anymore. There's a number of hours that an airplane pilot can work, and they can't work anymore. They're up there, So we know that there's a risk, and there's a very small risk in the airplane field. There would be a greater risk in going to the moon, but there are many people who would say, hey, why not? They would face that.
But, and of course, the shielding was designed for all of that. I mean, how much was known about the rays from the sun outside of our atmosphere? These were all pretty clearly understood, and so measures were taken to shield the astronauts.
It would be impossible to make a shield. It would be impossible to make a good enough shield.
Really?
And then, yes, the only way we could make enough shield is if we could put a base on the moon. If we actually started building a city on the far side of the moon, where workers would mine the metals, the iron and everything, and then we would make that shield on the moon at that lighter gravity, then we could make spacecraft that would have 10 times the shield, and it would be easy to get them into orbit, or easier. Or even easier is if we would go into the asteroid belt and find these gigantic asteroids. Some of these gigantic asteroids are made completely of iron and metal. And
there's one that's gold, right? There's one that's primarily gold.
Yeah. There's giant asteroids made complete of gold. Now, if we went up there and found one of those, we could mine into it and make a capsule, make a spacecraft out of it. Strap on an engine. There we go. Doesn't have to be aerodynamic in space. There's no air. But so there's all these different ways. But our society has to decide that we're not going to buy weapons. The amount of money that the world spends on weapons every year is measured in the $100 trillion. And if the world decided to, just 1 year, to not make any more guns or weapons, just 1 year, we not only could we end world hunger and go to the moon, what the incredible achievements that could be done, if we just dedicated. But our planet right now is more concerned about how many guns we have.
And we have this modern speeded up technology, and that could be used to actually save the planet, educate humanity, heal people, instead of creating weapons and wars and bombs and supporting the ultra-rich. So I think if the right education gets to the people in a bigger load and in like within a short time, we can expand all this knowledge and this fast technology for healing and for creating a nicer place to live.
Absolutely. Well said. And that pretty much wraps up this section of Live from the Crow's Nest. We cannot thank you enough for joining us and sharing, these this background and your thoughts on these matters, and how we can support athletes in ways that's way beyond just their athletic performance, but rather their mind. We really appreciate it. And thank you for coming on. We look forward to having you again. And Rita, I look forward to seeing you in LA, because sports and muscle training is such an important part of weight management and health and everything else. We are athletic by nature. We're supposed to move, use these muscles we have. And
Yes.
what we're going to do is take a quick 10-minute break, everybody, because last week there had been a request to do a subspace collective consciousness type session, one of my favorite types to do.